Well, Rob, this is a question I've had a lot of time to think about, and the more I think about it, it's partly mystery because why people get attached to different places, different over the years, over the centuries. It is a profound question. Other people do it in other cultures, but we in particular do it, and even in traveling to foreign countries who have had longer histories than ours. They even find it curious when they visit America that we're so we take such care of our historic places. You can walk in places in Europe where monumental battles have been fought. There's not even a plaque. There's no monument or open space left where such and such thing occurred. We do have this particular fondness for landmarks in our history, and perhaps in our few 100-year-long history, going back to the colonial era, the one event that where there are perhaps more monuments and more dedicated areas than any other in our history are those around the American Civil War. Why is that? I think a few reasons. It was a fratricidal war. There was no them and us. There was just us and us. I think that's one of the reasons, because it so profoundly tore the fabric of American society. There was so much destruction, so much loss of life, that catastrophe lingered for generations. If you look at American culture and art and music, you can see a change that occurs in the 1890s. It took an entire generation to grow up, live, and die before the national mood seems to have changed. Certainly individual lives may have rebounded quicker than that, but in terms of the national culture, the national family, it was an entire generation. So it's hard to overestimate the damage, the catastrophic nature of that war that it had on the generation that lived through it. More recently, scholars are revising upwards the number of war casualties, the number of dead, the number of wounded, the number of civilians who were killed, maimed, dispossessed. It was such a magnitude of tragedy that we don't really get our arms around it. And so I think of all the conflicts and of all the events in American history, the highs and the lows, the Civil War stands out still, even with the advance of time, even with the greater distance we get from it. Look, I've been working on my Civil War movies for more than 20 years, more than 25 years actually. So a big chunk of my life has been involved in researching these stories, telling these stories. And when I look around, I see a greater interest now than even when I started in the early late 1970s. So I think it's because of the initial catastrophic nature of the war, the fact that it was us and us, the fact also that it was fought in our own backyards. It wasn't fought in some faraway country, some faraway place, where only the soldiers went and some returned and some didn't. This was fought here. I live in Rappahannock County, Virginia. You look in any direction, you'll find a crossroads where this army moved north or this army moved south. Not far in adjoining counties, major battles of the Civil War were fought. There's a couple of houses right down the street from where I live that were used as hospitals by both armies moving south, moving north. Mosby's Raiders moved through here. So there's almost nowhere you can go which wasn't touched by the war. Also, I think the reasons why the war was fought still resonate. The issue of race is still very much in our consciousness as a people. We're still trying to work this out. still trying to strive to that perfection that Martin Luther King articulated, being able to look at one another, regardless of our racial and ethnic background, to be able to look at one another and see the content of our character and look beyond the superficie of what we see when we meet people, to find our common humanity. It's a different place here, certainly, than it was in the 1860s or even the 1960s when I grew up. But that striving for perfection, that's a road we're on, and so Americans are kind of acutely aware of this and sensitive to these issues. And that's something that the Civil War, the cauldron of the Civil War, encompasses in the issue of slavery and the abolition of slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation. Another thing that was another issue of the war was, where does sovereignty lie? Does the principal sovereignty lie in the individual? Does it lie in the community? Does it lie within a state? Does it lie in the national governance? These were issues that were argued by the founding generation. If you read all the arguments that were conducted in the Constitutional Convention, should we have a unitary presidency? Should there be 3 people making up the presidency? The founding generation was concerned about the devolution of power. They didn't want to see a king. We fought a revolution to get rid of king and hereditary aristocracy. They were looking for a more democratic way to share power. They feared concentrated power. So these were embodied in the Constitution, the protections against concentrated power, the checks and balances. They were also the further protections in the Bill of Rights. And so when you had these various issues moving through the 1840s, 1850s, could they have been resolved amicably, peaceably? Probably yes. I mean, all history has crossroads and diverging points when you could have taken this path or taken that path. And the circumstances and the players in the 1840s, 1850s, and 1860s led to war. I don't think it was inevitable, but it led to war. And the consequences were dire. But so one of the issues that is articulated, certainly in The War Starts, was the issue of, where does power lie? And those who made up the Confederate states that seceded would have argued in what we now call, and they call too, states' rights, that the political power was within the state governments, and that the state governments voluntarily came together to form a union, and that they could voluntarily leave. This was the argument for secession. And then the Unionists believed that, more or less, that the ultimate power resided in a federal government, and that states could no longer voluntarily leave. That was I'm oversimplifying, but it's the original conflict that was, and the spark was Fort Sumter. And those issues are still with us. We still argue every day about whether we resolve a certain issue at the federal level or whether it should be left to the states, or even whether it should be left within the state to the communities. And we're constantly having these arguments about zoning, about private property, about roads, about who pays for things. Every single issue goes back to the same issues that were fought over the Civil War. So I think for all these reasons, for historic reasons, for political reasons, for cultural reasons, the Civil War seems to be the cauldron where all these issues are concentrated. And then finally, from a filmmaker's point of view and from a storyteller's point of view, when you look at the Civil War, you find these incredible characters, these incredible people. Whether they were wearing blue, whether they were wearing gray, whether they were civilians, whether they were black, whether they were white. They're human, but at the same time, they're almost larger than life. And so many of these people on their own become worthy subjects for novels, history, and for movies. So I have no doubt that, that for many generations to come, as long as there's an America, filmmakers will be making movies about the American Civil War.